Okay, I think we'll make a start. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for a webinar on Macquarie's MBA. So my name is Luke and I am a student ambassador for the university, and I'll be helping out with moderating the Q&A chat that will happen at the end of today's webinar. So before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the Macquarie University land, the Wanamagal clan of the Darug Nation, whose cultures and customs have nurtured and continue to nurture this land since the Dreamtime, and we pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. So for today's webinar, we are very lucky to be joined by Associate Professor Katrina Lever-Makoka, who is the Associate Dean of the Programs and Pathways in the Postgraduate Macquarie Business School. And we also have two Macquarie MBA alumni, Stephen and Joseph. And so they're going to talk a little bit about their stories later on. So the point of this webinar is to give you a bit of a snapshot about Macquarie's MBA program. And it will be more focused on showcasing career options of the graduates, what future opportunities you may have if you complete the program, and the pathway to different career trajectories. So our guest speakers will discuss this idea of the future of business, that professions that leverage disruption will continue to make a difference in the 21st century. But they must ensure that their skills and expertise remain grounded on a solid foundation of ethics, trust, and integrity. So in terms of how this webinar will work in structure, so first you're going to learn a bit about Macquarie's MBA from Katrina, but then that will be followed by the two alumni experiences of how they've really utilized this MBA most effectively. This will then be followed by a moderated session of a few questions. And if you do have any extra questions, then we'll have a Q&A section where if you might have anything further you'd like to ask either of our panelists, you can always leave it in the Q&A chat that's at the bottom of your screens. And as a bit of housekeeping, this will also be recorded, so it'll be sent to your emails at the conclusion of this webinar for your convenience. So to get us started, I'll just hand it over to our Associate Professor, Katrina Lever-Makoka, to talk a bit about the MBA and more broadly about the Macquarie Business School.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate everyone here participating today. And I'm looking forward to talking to you about the MBA. So hopefully everyone can see the slides. And so I will now work through the slides. What is an MBA about? What can you do with an MBA? Why would you do an MBA? And I think some of the key things are listed in the slide that you can see. And I think that it means and it creates opportunities for different people in different ways. And it really it depends what you're looking for. So certainly creates exciting new career opportunities. And I think that leads to the next comment around transformation. It does provide an opportunity for a transformational experience if that's what you're looking for. If you want to shift your career to another direction, start a new particular area of concentration, it really is an impetus and provides the skill set and the gear levers you need to do that. Certainly better salary, and there's a lot of data to suggest that and to indicate, not just to suggest, that completing an MBA does increase your salary potential. Specifically new skills and knowledge. Okay, so when I talk later today around the curriculum, we'll see that there's a lot of skills that you're going to learn, and they're very important, or develop, because many of you are experienced professionals. And so the skills that you develop and also the specific knowledge that you gain. Importantly, networking opportunities. So the people in the classroom with you are people that you will meet and learn from. It's not a passive environment in an MBA classroom. So the learning comes not from someone standing there telling you stuff. It's someone facilitating you working with others. And so networking, collaborating, working as teams is essential. And those people that you meet whilst completing an MBA are people that you will collaborate with or network with in the future. And as I talk about that, it's not just also the students in your class. I mean, an MBA coming with an MBA is opportunities to meet alumni, to meet people in business who present to you, things that you participate in outside the classroom. And I'll mention a little bit more about that later. I think a fresh perspective on business is important to highlight, because we do embed the sustainability metrics, the sustainability development goals. There is a real emphasis on ethics and just different perspectives on areas that you may be working in that an MBA potentially will bring to you. Securing a great new job, sometimes there can be positions that actually require an MBA. Maybe it's part of your journey or your goal to get there, and this is a stepping stone. Stepping up to upper management, that's often a reason we hear from students as to why they've signed up for the MBA. And some specific things. So if you have an interest in becoming a company director one day, I think there's a lot of things that you will get out of the MBA that will assist you in that and in achieving that. Becoming a consultant, and not everyone, but there are many MBA students that want to get into management consulting, or in that vein, starting your own business as a consultant or in any domain. You might be a professional in a particular area, but you want to go out on your own, but you want the business skills, the various negotiation skills that you need to be able to go out and do that. So a number of reasons why someone might study an MBA. So who are we? Who is Macquarie Business School? Well, we are a business school that has strong corporate relationships. Our primary campus is in Macquarie Park, which is a very large industrial, well, I suppose not manufacturing, but a lot of industries located here. And in fact, we have over 100 businesses located on campus land here. So we have strong corporate relationships. We also have a city campus, so there are relationships with downtown and those businesses that are located in that district. Exceptional teaching and support staff, real world learning and opportunities, and I do want to talk about that again later on. I mean, and as I already said as well, it's not a passive environment in the classroom, and also how you learn and how you're assessed involves a lot of experiential activity. So real world learning, opportunities to apply your learning to real problems, and also problems, not just problems that are related to your particular scenario in which you work. You're working in a team where you'll have people from different countries, people from the domestic region, but they'll bring with them the issues and challenges that they face in their business. I think flexible learning solutions, can't emphasize that right now. So with COVID and with the need to deliver learning from a distance, there's a lot of work that not just Macquarie Business School, all the learning providers have had to do in the space of providing even more flexibility than we already have. So yes, a lot more flexibility in how you engage, whether there's synchronous, asynchronous learning. We do have two fabulous campuses, one at North Ryde and one at the city. So that's certainly a big part of an MBA experience, is connecting with people. But we do have online delivery. We do have flexible delivery options that involve blocks on the weekend rather than having to attend every week. And I will talk more about that as well. Of course, you have a more supportive community. You'll have a community of alumni, and two of them are going to be talking to you a little bit later on. So the alumni are very engaged with the MBA students. A support community from academics, from support staff, student services. I think that's another thing. We're a team in doing this. I mean, it's not a hierarchical delivery mode where the academic stands up there and knows everything. You get a lot out of an MBA, not just from the others in the room, but you'll bring a lot to them as well. So I mentioned the extensive alumni network. We are accredited with AACSB, which is a prestigious business school accreditation. And whilst accreditation sounds a little bit boring and a ho-hum, it does bring with it a lot of quality and standards in terms of your learning experience, in terms of who teaches you, in terms of ensuring that the outcomes are achieved by students. We don't just say to you, this is what you'll be able to do at the end of an MBA. We make sure that that's possible by doing some assurance of learning and other things in that space. And importantly, we are consistently ranked in the top 100 MBAs in the world by the FT and Economist. And whilst the top 100 is great, certainly in the case of the FT, there's only 3 Australian business schools in the top 100. So rankings aren't everything, but it is something that we strive to maintain and achieve. So real world learning. So the curriculum is informed by domestic and global corporate, academic and community partnerships and networks. So we work with a community of participants to develop the curriculum. And this ensures that students are engaged in real world challenges, and we're constantly updating case studies to ensure that they relate to real issues. In fact, we're currently working on a simulation related to the airline industry, which is really relevant and current. So it is the fusion of contemporary business theory with real world application. It's grounded though in relevant knowledge and skills. And so that's where we've got the subjects like economics, accounting, finance, marketing. For those of you that are not from a business discipline, that allows you to upskill and be ready to deal with the challenges of the business strategy components, the leadership practice components, the big data components, bringing all that knowledge together and applying those, developing your skills is really part of that transformative journey that you will be on in an MBA. So a bit about how we do it, and I think I've probably said a lot there already. There are not as relevant, I don't think, for domestic students, but certainly if you're looking at doing your MBA full time, it's probably something you're really interested in knowing about internships and those opportunities. We have dedicated career support for the MBA. So they do work with full-time and part-time students and cater for the needs of the different cohorts, but certainly internships are opportunities that you can engage in. Exchange programs, again, they're not necessarily exchanged for 6 months. We have short-term exchanges. Not too much happening at the moment, but just last year we had a team of students go to China to complete a unit over there. We do have a number of partnerships with different universities. And one thing we're actually looking at putting in place at the moment is exchange via an online unit. So completing a unit at a fabulous university in another country to bring a different experience whilst you're not actually able to travel there at the moment. So what does the MBA cohort look like? Well, the average age is, as you can see there, 35 plus. They have significant experience at a managerial level. Also multicultural, students from 40 different countries. A broad mix of industry sectors, so we don't have people just from IT or just from engineering or just from marketing. We really have a broad mix of industry sectors, mining, financial sector, manufacturing and so on. So real diversity. It's also has a broad global alumni network, and we really believe in the lifelong learning opportunity. So when you finish an MBA, that's not the end of the story. We're going to stay connected with you and be part of your life coach in terms of learning and providing short courses and opportunities for you to engage and actually give back. So this MBA journey doesn't stop with the graduation. You're part of a community that you will go on to engage in learning, engage in alumni, engage with the students that follow you. And so certainly we cater for a wide variety of job functions as well. Not everyone is a CEO, not everyone is a marketing manager, not everyone is a finance or CFO or an entrepreneur. There's a wide variety of different job functions that people come from. So pathways to leadership, I say, because really at the core of an MBA, it is developing those leadership skills, the ability to take others with you, to take an organisation and move it along, to take yourself and move yourself along. And I think really key at such an uncertain and complex and actually volatile time to have those, that be empowered with those skills. So what does it look like? And I don't want to, spend too much time in the detail, but, generally we have what we call the certificate, which is 4 units. And you can sign up for that, at the beginning and decide whether you want to go on to the full MBA. They are, all of these certificate, diploma and are a pathway into the MBA, or you sign up directly for the MBA. They each feed onto each other or into each other. I think it's important to note that with the graduate certificate, you don't have to have a bachelor degree. If you have 5 years of work experience, you can actually sign up for the grad certificate. And if you've passed those 4 units, you can then move on to the diploma or the MBA. So we really do cater for people that have the bachelor degree as a first step, but also those that have all that knowledge and wealth of experience that sets them up to be successful in an MBA in the future. So you can use stepping stones and go do your grad certificate, your grad diploma, which is another 4 units on top of the 4 of the certificate. But then ultimately the MBA, the 4 foundation, 8 core and 4 electives. And what kind of topics do you cover in the core units? You've got accounting, finance, economics and marketing. Those will bring you up to, and they're not, they're units that cover the disciplines in an applied way. It's for managers, it's for business people. So for example, accounting, you're not sitting there doing debits and credits and journal entries. You're applying accounting and understanding accounting, how it's relevant to decision making and how it's relevant to managers and leaders. And that's the case for all of those, what I would call foundational type units. And then you get into the real core of the MBA, the leadership and motivation, leading others, motivating yourself, organisational behaviour. We've got ops management, importantly, business strategy, and recently introduced core unit being big data and decision making, and a fabulous experiential capstone where you work with business on a particular project, bringing together everything that you've learned prior to that. So the capstone you would normally do at the end of the MBA. And then 4 electives. If you do the complete MBA, you've got 4 electives. And what do you do in that space? Well, there's a suite of elective units. And so I list quite a few of the areas there. I think probably from my observation and data that I've looked at, the most popular areas are further units in leadership and self-development, finance, financial strategy, marketing, and strategy more broadly, I would say would be the most popular. But there are a wide range of electives to choose from. So you can choose what suits you. I mentioned internships and exchange programs. They are electives, but also if you're interested in research and doing a research unit that if that's a path you'd like to pursue, we do have research units and something we call the living case study, which is a management consulting project where you work with a business on a real problem and you compete in teams for the business to judge who is the winning solution, so to speak. And so that's quite an engaging experience. And I think on our website, we've got a couple of videos from previous living case studies that you can have a look at if you want to. I'm going to talk about offerings, but I note that not all electives are offered in the city campus. You can complete your entire MBA in the city campus, but certainly there's not all the elective suite that we offer there. So you might have to come to North Ryde campus if you want to do a particular elective that isn't available in the city. So flexible learning, I think this is a key feature of the Macquarie Business School MBA, is that we are renowned for being very flexible. We have 4 terms and we have intakes each term. We offer part-time and full-time, and our classes are available weekday, evening, or weekend block classes. And I'll talk a bit about how the block classes work. And that seems to be very attractive to people. You're busy people. Some of you have families, busy jobs. You may have to travel. Block is a way in which you can often kind of tee up a couple of weekends a term to not be available for all the rest of the things that go on in life, but complete a unit in the MBA. And certainly the block classes at the moment are offered at North Ryde. We have, though, numerous offerings in the city campus, and so it's something that I think is really attractive to people. You can mix and match. You don't have to choose one or the other. You can do some classes in the city and some at North Ryde. So how do the blocks work? I often get this question, what's a block class? And something actually that I think is important to understand, because the key thing I'm sure that's going through everyone's mind who's joining is that how am I going to do this? How am I going to fit this on? Am I able to achieve this goal that I have? And so often it is about planning and knowing how it's going to fit. So this slide is just an example how a typical block class might work. So weekly classes, as I say, their daytime ones are usually 9 to 1 in the morning or 1 to 5 in the evening. And they actually, overall, the class time, if it's a face-to-face class, is 4 hours a week times 10 weeks. That's if you're doing weekly classes. Now, the block format, what happens is that you have a 10-week period of learning with examinations in week 11. But what happens, a lot of it is it's a flipped classroom environment where you're allocated pre-reading activities, in this example, week 1 and 2. And then in the third week of the term, you come in for a block class, and that'll often be Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So you might have to have the Friday annual leave from work. You then go away, you've probably been allocated to teams to work on projects, to do further reading and assignments in week 4, and then you come back in week 5 for another 2 days of classes, not 3 this time. Now, sometimes there's a bigger gap between the 2 block sessions face-to-face. Then you've got the period after that week 5 where you've had face-to-face time to work on projects, activities, and if there is an exam, it's in week 11. If not an exam, there'd be an assessment task, probably a key one that would be submitted in that week 11. So that's an example how it works. I think there might be questions in the Q&A time, so certainly happy to answer those. But I do want to emphasize the bullet point there about online. We have got a variety of unit offerings that are delivered via a very flexible mode, that is online. But what we mean by online, many of them are remote delivery in that there is synchronous time, but it's using Zoom, as well as asynchronous time. So much of the content is delivered in recordings, and then you come together in remote chat facilitated classroom. So I can talk more about that too later on if there are any questions. I know I'm taking a bit of time. It's my last slide in terms of what do we offer. I think the student experience is an important thing to talk about, and I alluded to it or stated it early on. A lot of what you'll get out of the MBA is not the specific things that or specific units that I list. It'll be about the student experience. It'll be around the guest speakers that we have in outside the classroom. It'll be around the networking opportunities. It'll be around engaging with alumni, the career support. The career support, not about necessarily getting a job, but setting you up for your stepping stones that you want to achieve. We have a lot of skills workshops, online materials that we provide, and it's a big piece of work that we are actually working on at the moment to ensure that that whole student experience is mapped, and so that we have all the appropriate touch points with students as they go through that MBA journey. But this slide will pop up again a little bit later for you to find out where you go to for additional consultation. But that's it from me. And I now will hand over, where, as I said before, we're very lucky to have 2 alumni speaking to you today. Firstly, we have Stephen Lloyd-Jones, and he's going to talk to you today a little bit about his experience post-MBA, but handing over to you, Stephen.
Catriona, thank you very much. And thank you very much for everybody for joining us today. So I'm an MBA alumni. way back in the misty time when there was one building for the students and another one for the staff, and the car park was just a sea of mud. So we all turned up in our business suits, slogged it across to the lecture theatre, and really it built this incredible sense of community. Some of the conditions weren't as gentle as they are today. So some practical difficulties in the way. But my career spans, I think, the whole of the technology, information technology cycles that we can see today. I started out life really as a hardware engineer. I ran around and I fixed things on large computer sites, and those things were made out of transistors. And the consoles were basically typewriters with a bunch of solenoids underneath, not even purpose built. So, you know, starting from that kind of base and doing a Bachelor of Science, majoring in pure maths and in physics, you can see that you might turn out, and it certainly did turn out in my case, a pretty black and white kind of guy. You know, it was either on or it was off. It was this or it was that. And there was really no room in the middle for shades of grey. So one of the things I got out of the MBA was just understanding that there are multiple perspectives to any given problem. There are multiple points of view. If you're a technical guy, I mean, by and large, you kind of work alone, you know, or maybe in small groups. But being part of a team was almost, you know, it was an almost absolutely new experience for me coming into the MBA. And so were some of the subjects. Although I could add up, I could do it in binary, octal, hexadecimal. I'd never really had much to do with accounting. And so that was a whole new world for me. You know, understanding and looking at a set of financials, understanding what it meant in terms of what was going on in the business and what that might mean in the future. They were all groundings I had from the MBA, and I used subsequently. I've done a couple of company turnarounds, and just looking at the numbers, you can kind of understand, you know, what's going on. Before you talk to the people, you've got some sort of foundation there, and you've got some sort of guidance and you know what you have to do next. So having done that, you know, got into the MBA, it's really added a lot to me. I mean, personally, just being part of teams, and it made me, in the end, a good manager. You know, just understanding what it means to be part of a team, understanding the wider context of the business. And certainly in some businesses, you look at them and you go, oh dear, this isn't so good. Maybe I'd better do something else. And one of the things it did do for me was give me an understanding that hardware really, as a skilled environment with any longevity, computer hardware, you know, it was going to change radically. It was getting de-skilled. And so I made a conscious decision as part of the MBA to go into software and really focus on that as the dominant theme in my career. Interestingly enough, I remember doing a software class up in Hong Kong, and the guy sitting next to me was a typesetter. Another profession that had you know, just passed its use by date. You know, we were all replaced by other things, or our skills were no longer needed. So you know, went into that, learned how to you know, effectively convey the advantages of hardware service and software and the service that went with that. And in the end, I learned how to run companies. So, you know, it took a while, maybe a few decades before I was effective at running companies, but then got to the stage where I could take a company and I could do something with it. I could understand the strategy, what we might do. And, you know, and particularly in technology companies, there's a lot of pressure. The time cycles are very fast. You've got to be able to think on your feet. And yet standing back from that, looking at the strategy from a broader content, a broader point of view, and just seeing what you could do in terms of reinvigorating and repurposing what you already had. I think they were key things that I got out of the MBA. I've remained involved with Macquarie University. I mean, not just in this context of being an alumni, but there are other programs. I've been lucky to be part of the PACE program as well. So that's a community and engagement program where people like me come in and give projects to third-year students in their final year of the degree, and then take them through, you know, a whole development cycle or a build cycle in some sort of technology project, business-oriented technology project, and then teach them, you know, teach everybody how to present, how to organise themselves as a team, what their role should be, so on and so forth. So, look, it's been a very, very rewarding set of interactions with Macquarie University, just as this one is now. Now, I might stop there. Is there anything that, Catriona, you would like to add, or should I just pass over to Jo now?
I think I'm back in again. I'll just zoom in, start video. Okay. Look, thank you so much for that. That was really fabulous, Stephen. Thank you. I'm sure I'm happy for you to hand over to Joseph, but hey, why don't we do it together?
Okay.
So, yeah. So Joseph.
All right, Jo.
Yep.
Take it away.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for inviting me on this panel, and thanks to all the attendees. I hope that you know, the stuff that you hear today will allow you to decide to pursue the MBA. A little bit about my background. I am an audio engineer and a chemical engineer, and then did my MBA at Macquarie, and then went on to get my company director's diploma at the Australian Institute of Company Directors. I started employment out of engineering with an American multinational company, which is an interesting experience. Then worked for a British multinational company, and it was interesting to see the difference in cultures and the difference about how they did their business. And then joined an Australian consulting company as I started my MBA, who did a lot of work around the Asia Pacific. So I've actually been really lucky to get that global exposure, which normally I think would have taken me a lot more had I have not very luckily landed in those positions. But it's interesting doing an MBA and the opportunities that present themselves to you. And I'd like to just suggest that if you're going to do an MBA, don't think that you have to have your whole career worked out right now before you even start, because being in the right place at the right time counts for a lot as well. Sure, strategic planning helps, but I'll tell you how I got my career after that consulting company and how it developed into what I do today. So I was working for an Australian consulting company, and they weren't used to buying other businesses, but they were presented with an opportunity for an acquisition. And obviously when presented with the opportunity, they had to say, well, okay, how are we going to go about this? How are we going to assess it? How are we going to understand the benefits? How are we going to integrate into our business? What price should we pay? All those sorts of questions. And they looked around the office, and they didn't have anybody with that skill set, but they saw that I was doing an MBA and said, well, you're doing an MBA, aren't you? I said, yes, I was actually in my first year. They said, well, you can do it. Why don't you have a look at this? So I'd read books on acquisitions, but never really managed one myself, and didn't really know where to start. But simply by the virtue of being involved in an MBA program, it was recognized by the CEO and the board that if I didn't, I should have the skills, at least, to be able to make a good shot at this, then present them with a proposal. And that's really where it all started. So I'd like to give you a very long strategic dissertation on how I devised my career into M&A. The reality is it was a complete fluke, being in the right place at the right time, but having undertaken the MBA. If I wasn't doing my MBA studies, I never would have been offered that opportunity in the first place. So I think the real thing to understand about an MBA is that it opens doors, it provides opportunity. It provides opportunities that you otherwise may not have had, and certainly moved my career in the direction of M&A. So from there, I did that acquisition for them, and it worked out really well. I did another one for them, and that worked out really well too. And then I thought, well, I'm actually pretty good at this. And by that time, I'd finished my MBA. So I started my own consulting company, and was involved in numerous M&A purchases, and ended up with 12 companies in 7 countries and 300 consulting staff, and eventually listed that, did an IPO on the ASX. And all came out of being right place, right time, doing the right course. So don't think that you have to strategically design your future from here and that, you know, that has to make sense for you to be able to start an MBA, just be comfortable with the fact that it's a fantastic degree, very broad degree, and gives you the ability to look at information, understand that information, develop a hypothesis, put that into a strategy, and then actually action that strategy. And I'd say that those skills are really the skills that have helped me all the way through. So the ability to identify undervalued assets, undertake business restructuring and turnaround, and be able to build a business for disposal at premium market rates is a skill set that I developed over the years that all come from me having undertaken an MBA in the first place. So as an engineer, pre-MBA, as Stephen said, I really I have some affinity with what Stephen said, because engineers are very black and white too. It either works or it doesn't. There's no, it sort of works. The engineers tend not to see grey. So 50 Shades of Grey to me is a paint color chart. It's not business. So yeah, having the ability to identify information that I need to make decisions, understand the quality of that information and the frequency by which it can be refreshed, and develop strategies that can benefit the organization, encapsulate really everything that an MBA does. And then to be able to execute those strategies on the operational side and bring them to fruition. It's a set of skills that's not only really valuable in an organization, but actually quite exciting to be involved in. It's an exciting part of business. So those hard skills are skills that you'll learn. But in addition to that, you'll learn other skills, like, you know, how to build enterprise value, sustainability, shareholder returns, how to be able to assess an organization by reading balance sheets and P&Ls, like most people read a book and understand the theme and what role the characters play. They're all skills that are really essential. Now, people with a finance background, and when I did my MBA, I think about a third were either science or engineering graduates, but another third were, you know, commerce and finance graduates. And it was interesting to see that the light bulb even flicked on for them, because they're very used to obviously P&Ls and balance sheets and accounts and ledgers and all those sorts of things, and economic trends and analysis. But the ability to put that into context of functional activity that can be performed in an organization to build value and increase sustainability or resilience, or build a stream of benefits that can accrue to another purchaser, that's all the stuff that you get by doing an MBA. You certainly do have to practice it, but it's the various subjects that you learn in an MBA will impart those sorts of skills and abilities to you. So that's a little bit about my background and what I've achieved. And I guess after that, having my own consulting company, I've gone on to build quite a number of businesses globally, with operations in the US, Asia Pacific, and Europe, and continue to act as a mentor to CEOs and boards that operate those businesses, and I really enjoy that. So that's a little bit about me. Luke Catriano, I'll pass back to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for that, Joseph. That was really great to hear from you, and as well from Stephen. I'm sure it has been really valuable for all the attendees here, just hearing that extra flavor from the alumni. And I can already tell, as we've had a few questions coming through based on your perspectives and your experiences. That's really great to see. And if you do have any other questions, you can always put it in the Q&A chat. But for now, we're going to move into more of a panel discussion with all the panelists here. And so we'll get Stephen to jump back onto the webinar. And we'll move into asking just kind of a broad question that you can all have a bit of a stab at here. But what skills do professionals need to ensure that they are remaining relevant in the future of work? Maybe Katrina, if you'd like to weigh in on that first.
I think probably the alumni are going to be even better at this, but I think the ability to adapt and change, you know, I think we've seen it so much in recent time, and continue to, the ability to reflect, to adapt, to change, to kind of take the punches and move on. So I think that's a key skill, and I suppose experience you know, can give you that capability to be able to do that. But also there are some skills and some ways in which you can cope better with change and volatility and disruption. So, I mean, for me, I think that kind of that's how I'd answer that. But I think we have two people with an extensive experience of saying, well, look, they've both done an MBA. In what ways did that help them to cope with change, which it seems both of them have gone through a lot themselves?
Maybe we'll go to you first, Stephen, on that. How have you remained relevant?
Thank you very much. Let me just take a moment to collect my thoughts. I think there are some fundamental things. I think one of them is retaining the ability to learn and be keen to learn. You know, you can see people in many other professions and you know, many cohorts really are overwhelmed by the rapidity of change of technology. And I sit here going, well, yeah, you know, it's kind of sped up, and yes, it's kind of got a lot fancier and a bit more usable. But really, you know, computers are still just the adding machines that they were. They're just in much better packages, and they're easier to deal with rather than being as friendly as a cornered rat. You know, human beings can interact with them. You know, and we've seen that. We've seen people now becoming so dependent on them that, you know, without Google Maps, I just can't get anywhere. You know, I can't do anything. And we also see, I think, what I consider, you know, completely wasted opportunities with technology. You know, being able to sit in the middle of a city square and identify Starbucks just from the picture on the top of the building. I mean, I just think that's ludicrous. You know, technology is so sophisticated that you can just about see through time, and we use it to find a cup of coffee. I think there are better uses for technology in that sense. However, you know, just thinking about those things and continuing to think about those things, I think is a kind of key. You know, I mean, not just coping with the environment, but using what's happening out there in the wider world for not just your benefit, but for the benefit of everybody else. Joe?
Stephen, I agree with you completely, and Catriona as well. I think if there's one thing that will be consistent, that has been through my entire experience and will be consistent in the future, is change. The reality is everything changed, and today it changes at warp speed. I remember one course in particular that I did in my MBA. It was managing in a changing environment. And when I started the course and looked at the outline, I thought, oh, okay, well, this will be a quick one. I'll sort of do a few assignments and get it over and done with. And it ended up being the most engaging subject that I undertook, because the lecturer's total philosophy was that business is constant white water, not smooth sailing. Smooth sailing is the aberration, but it's constant white water. So you've got to consistently look at all the influences, the wind, the water, the shape of the sails, keep tacking to and fro, looking at the telltales, and on a consistent, ever-going basis, not just sitting back and letting it fly. So, you know, that's the way that business is. You've got to be agile. You've got to, you know, be ready to change. You've got to be resilient. You've got to welcome change. Not only that, let's face it, disruption is creating change. And you have to be a disruptor today to really make substantial inroads, which means you're looking for change. So there's no such thing as being worried about change or being upset at change. The reality is you've got to pursue change. In the old days, we used to call this innovation, and being innovative would be a change. The difference between innovation and disruption is the pace of that change. Innovation is a gradual change over time. Disruption is a complete 90-degree. And we need to be looking at all those. So the ability to be resilient, agile, and to embrace change, particularly digital transformation, is certainly one of the major skills we need going into the future.
It's great to hear. And it's good that you elucidated and kind of talked about how the MBA has allowed you to navigate that change. And it sounds like your lecturer must have been a sailor by with the analogies he was using there.
I think so, and it's stuck with me through life.
Well, moving forward, and first I'll get Katrina to talk a bit about, because obviously COVID's something that has brought us here online and virtually. So maybe you can talk a little bit about how the next 12 months, obviously you're not a philosopher, you're not going to see what's going to happen, but maybe how will the MBA change and how it's taught? And then from the alumni, if you could talk a bit about how you've applied all these financial, these strategic and management theories to a post-COVID world.
Okay, so me first. So we're actually doing stuff right at the moment, planning for next year and how we learn from what's happened, and we're not going to go back to the old normal. I mean, I think everyone's talking like that. I mean, people aren't all going to be going back to the offices like before, but certainly Macquarie Business School isn't either. So we've actually have a project where we're mapping out how can we really identify what is the synchronous time, the time when we need to be together in the classroom and face-to-face, because it is a face-to-face MBA. There are online MBAs. But what is the key crucial thing that we want to do in the classroom, and how can we make our course even more flexible where it's delivering stuff, delivering knowledge and information? How can we make that available asynchronously and then save the time when we're together in our blocks, etc., for real quality engagement and brainstorming and working through problems? How can we ensure that students have the ability to complete the MBA despite the fact they may spend 6 months somewhere else, although that's not going to happen now, but we're talking about the future. And it has been a challenge already for us to deal with students that work has picked them up and sent them somewhere else. So having a broad range of offerings that includes the online or remote delivery more comprehensively. We've always had the grad certificate can be done online, but this is a really top quality remote delivery engagement for a number of units in the MBA, and it's something that students choose. So if it's a student that wants, because we have had demand to be face-to-face and we've been struggling with having the room capacity and the ability to deliver that. So we know that there are students who really want, they learn face-to-face and that's absolutely what they want. But how do we make it valuable time? How do we make it sufficient selection so that we cater to the students' needs rather than Macquarie University itself? I mean, it would be much simpler if we could just have a square timetable framework and slot in the classes, but it just doesn't work like that. So maximum flex is what we're seeking to achieve, and we're mapping it out at the moment as we're preparing the timetable for next year.
Mm-hmm. It's great to hear, Katrina. I think now, if we can get an insight from the alumni, I'm not sure who would like to take or tackle this first, but how can you use those theories you learned within the MBA to that post-COVID world?
Maybe I go first on this one, Stephen?
Yeah, take it away, Joe.
A post-COVID world. What an interesting time we live in. You know, I think that every cloud has a silver lining. We all know the negatives of COVID. We've lived through them. And we probably know people that have caught it. So it's certainly not a laughing matter. It's a very, very serious scenario. But let's just look at the other side. What positives have come out of this? The reality is we've all had to adapt. It goes back to that agility and adaptation ability. We've had to adapt. We've had to make things work. And we have. People are working from home. There's a new attitude out there as well. We've achieved, you know, in a matter of months, what normally would have taken perhaps a decade in terms of attitudes of people to being able to work remotely, to use Zoom and other technologies, and to be accountable for their output rather than their activity. So on the leadership and the performance appraisal and team management side, amazing changes. You know, leaders that were usually autocratic or hierarchical organizations where, you know, they manage activity rather than output. In other words, you've got to be at the desk at 8:30, you've got to be there at 6 at night, you've got to do these activities. And now, because they can't see people anymore or can't manage their time frame, are now looking at outputs as a means of performance measurement. And so that's interesting. If we're looking at output as a means of performance measurement and a reward system, that's a really interesting place to be for people that are producing that output. So then it's the quality of output and the timeliness of the output that's of value, not the hours that you spend doing the job. So we live in an interesting world, and I think that there are lots of benefits that will come from it. I think a massive increase in efficiency in the way that businesses undertake their work and provide their goods and services. I see a substantial amount of disruption still coming. I think the other benefit that we've had from Kodak and people working from home is they've actually had time to think and be creative and be innovative. I mean, look at all the hospitality organisations that found creative ways of continuing to do business. I'd argue that a lot of them won't go back to exactly the way they were doing it before, but there'll be a mixture of services that they offer in the future. And I think this is just fantastic. We live in such an exciting time, and you know, this disruption and things like artificial intelligence and digital disruption and biotechnology, it's just an astounding time. You've got to be flexible, agile, and adaptable to cope with it. And as long as you have the right attitude and you welcome change, then I think you'll do very, very well. Stephen.
Very good.
Yeah.
Stephen, a few words on that?
Yeah, look, I by and large, I think, agree with what Joe has said. In my case in particular, I'm a director of a charity called Take 3. And one of the things it did was force some changes that, you know, we'd kind of been, you know, dithering around the edges of. It just forced them through with a speed that was actually very, very helpful. So one of the main sources of revenue that Take 3 had was going out into schools and educating school children. And for a long time, we realised it was a people-bound task. You know, we didn't have enough people, and you know, if only we could get it online, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You know, and the other side of that was, well, we didn't really have the, you know, the infrastructure, or we didn't have the content. And what COVID did was force all that to the front of our thinking, and it forced the process. So now we've just released this huge raft of stuff online, educational material. People are now more accepting of it because the schools by and large have had to shift at least some of their lessons online. So it's going to be enormously helpful. And I mean, it's almost the saviour, I think, of that particular revenue stream for Take 3. So the net outcome, even though it's been absolutely agonising to get there, and particularly for the people that actually had to execute the work, it's been a great outcome. So yeah.
Yeah,
That's great to hear. Yeah,
I think adding to that too with studies. For studies, I mean, we can connect with people that wouldn't dream of being able to get to the campus to learn. So I think there's been so much opportunity created. Whilst it's a challenge that the model with international students coming here has been compromised, I think there's potential to reach them in a different way and reach, you know, our domestic students much more broadly.
Yep, that's great to hear. And just conscious of time, because we don't have too long, a few questions here from our audience for our alumni. If you had an option to do the MBA again, an important question, but what would you do differently? Maybe Joseph first.
If I did the MBA again, what would I do differently? I'd probably have a much higher degree of commitment than what I did. Because at the time, I saw it as a means to an end. In retrospect, it was the means to the development of my entire career. So when you look at it that way, you think, well, okay, so I really should have put in a lot more effort than what I did. I mean, I got through, but I think I could have done a lot better, to be honest. So in hindsight, yeah, I would have been much more serious about it than I was at the time.
And Stephen?
Well, I did mine part-time, and it's kind of like stretching out the agony. Even with a couple of block courses, and I did do some block courses, very, very effective in terms of value and the time invested. So I dragged it out. I think it was 2.5 years, and that was pretty hectic as a part-time schedule, while still working full-time. You've got to remember. So I think if I had my time again, I'd really see if I could, you know, maybe cut right back on the expenses and actually do the thing full time, and get it over and done with just that much quicker. So that'd be my take on that. Now, it's not practical for everybody, and I speak, you know, maybe looking back at the past through rose-coloured glasses, was it really possible? And I suspect, you know, it might have been, but maybe not. So, you know, who really knows? But if I had my time again, I'd probably give that some very serious consideration.
Just on that, I noticed a few students increasingly tell me about the fact they're in full-time work, but their employer is flexible to let them have, say, a Friday morning off or a Monday morning off to attend and complete a unit face-to-face. And I think that creates a lot of opportunity if people are working in a more flexible environment to be able to fast-track their MBA a little bit more and have that flexibility with work to say, I'll come and do a day class. I'm working full-time, but I can make it up later, or employers just being quite flexible in that space. So it's worth a conversation with your boss.
Yes,
That's
indeed.
good to hear. Yeah. Any other points you'd like to add there? No. Well, I think that will wrap up our session today. So, as I've just put in the chat, just a friendly reminder: if you do have any extra questions that we unfortunately didn't get to, you can always book a personal consultation with the Future Students team, and you can follow the link that I sent there. And just a big thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you to our alumni for giving their insights. And thank you to Katrina for talking about the MBA and the Macquarie Business School. So if you have any further questions.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks, Joseph and Stephen. Much appreciated.
All right, pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Pleasure.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.